this out of the recording. Happy 4th of July, Jairo. I feel so independent of the Brits.
How's that?
It's perfect.
You think so?
Yes, everything is perfect.
Mm.
Today, I feel extremely independent. Resist the Brits.
Resist the Brits?
That's right.
Brit exit?
Brexit.
Brexit.
In this case, it's US exit. Us exit. USA exit.
America exit.
Yes. Well, so today we're talking about freedom.
Freedom? Do we have freedom?
Well,
political freedom?
It's a
Mental
very
freedom?
good question. First of all, let's define the word freedom. And then let's see how many different perspectives we can look at freedom from.
What about the word free? Is that as it doesn't cost anything?
That's free from financial burden.
What does dumb to the freedom? The free plus dumb.
No, freedom is actually it's the realm of the free. So let's go and do freedom.
The realm of the free.
Etymology.
Like Buddha
Here
realm.
we go. So let's start with that. In etymonline.com, which is a site that I go very often.
David Norton. David Norton is in the house.
All right.
Well, welcome, David Norton, my favorite Greek philosopher. Happy 4th of July. We missed you.
I think he's muted.
Saturday.
I think he's either you have to unmute him or
I unmuted myself. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Now
yes.
you're free to unmute yourself.
Oh, good. Good.
Happy Independence Day.
Yeah, right, huh? Okay, so when are we going to start this, Jairo?
We started already. You're recorded, so
okay.
we're already on the record.
Oh, okay. So what you talking about?
Freedom.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Independence Day. Today is we study the notion of freedom. So I'm sorry?
I say, is there such a thing?
That's the question of the day. So freedom, let's define it, and then let's see, how we can spin it. Let's go ahead and spin freedom.
I define freedom as the realm of the free, and the free are those who live in the realm, and they are free because they have free will. And if you don't have free will, you're not free. And how do you acquire free will? Through meditation. Because when we meditate, we liberate our mind from its addictions. So if we're free of all of our addictions, we have free will. Otherwise, we are addicted. We're enslaved to our addictions.
Well, that was a good start, Jairo. I was going to read the etymology of the word freedom. So I'll add to that. In here, they write Old English freedom, power of self-determination, state of free will. emancipation from slavery, deliverance, exemption from arbitrary or despotic control, civil liberty. From the 14th century, meaning possession of particular privileges, and similar formation of Wolf region freedom, Dutch, boom. And then they quote here, John Calhoun, 1816, in the House of Representatives. It has been said by some physicians that life is a forced state. The same may be said of freedom. It requires efforts. It presupposes mental and moral qualities of a high order to be generally diffused in the society where it exists. Holy macaroni, I say to that. What?
Huh? What happened to David?
He got cut off?
Join the meeting.
Ah, somebody's joining the meeting.
Maybe he lost his
Internet or
internet.
Wi-Fi?
And somebody's calling in.
Who's that?
If I can let him in.
Let him in. Maybe
You're
Francisco.
Do I let him in? There's a waiting room.
You guys still there?
Yes.
Yes.
I got cut off for some reason. I don't know why.
Mm.
All right. So,
There's the call-in user.
so the first definition you gave of freedom, Jairo, I think was from the Buddhist perspective, where we are free of our addictions and our wants and our aversions and repulsions, phobias, compulsions, etc., etc. So freedom from our own wants and dislikes. And here in the etymology of the word, they're talking about self-determination. And of course, what Calhoun says here is, I don't know if you heard that, David.
No.
I was in the etymology of the word. Well, they talk about self-determination, a state of free will, emancipation from slavery, deliverance, exemption from arbitrary or despotic control, civil liberty, possession of particular privileges. And this is a good one. Possession. What particular privileges do we possess, the three of
Hello,
us?
call-in user.
And then
Who are you?
Hi, Jairo. Oh, God. Hello?
Oh, who is that? Chris?
Yes.
Oh, hello, Chris. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
And
Hi
everyone
there.
here?
Let's make the
Welcome
four of us, the three
to
musketeers
the
plus D'Artagnan.
meditation on freedom.
Well, Jairo, introduce us, because Chris to me is a first time name in this Zoom gathering.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, that
Not
this
really.
is Chris. She's joined us in other meetups like dance stoics and other things that have come about. And there's
Interesting. Well,
David Norton.
That's me right here.
He's been in dance stoics meetups, haven't you? And others.
What's that?
And you've been to dance stoics meetings through Zoom? You haven't tried that?
No.
On Monday and Friday?
Whoa, Dan. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know Dan's. Yeah, right.
But you've been to his meetups,
Oh, yeah.
haven't you? Through Zoom? Lately? No. Through Zoom? Via Zoom? Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Have you been to dance stoics meetings through Zoom
Yeah, Dan, the Stoic Dan, right?
on Mondays or Fridays?
Yeah, I've been to both of them.
Yeah, Chris has been to them,
Okay.
maybe. No one has seen her yet.
You guys have seen me. I've been in person when we used to go to the Panera Bread. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, in person we have. That's right.
Yes.
Well, Jairo,
And
what
Luis
is the?
hasn't.
No, I don't think I have met
Luis lives.
Chris.
Luis lives in another time zone almost in Florida, in Claremont. That's so far away. It's almost to Tampa.
That's the end of the world. That's the frontier. Just like in the movie Dances with Wolves. I want to see the frontier.
Mm.
Well,
So
Jairo,
we were.
go ahead and lay down the subject of the day.
So we
And,
were trying to define freedom. Yeah. And Luis del Pino looked at the definition in what, etim.com?
etymology, yeah. I always look at the root of the word, the etymology of the word. It changes throughout the time, but within the different aspects or definitions or understandings of the word, it gives you an idea what the word was supposed to mean when it was coined. And so I'll read it again here in Etymology Online. It says freedom, power of self-determination, state of free will, emancipation from slavery, deliverance, exemption from arbitrary or despotic control, civil liberty. Here, this one is very interesting. Possession of particular privileges. And I immediately asked myself the question, what particular privileges the four of us enjoy? And then there's a quote by Calhoun, John Calhoun, in 1816 in the floor of the House of Representatives, and he writes this, and I think this is beautiful in and of itself. It has been said by some physicians that life is a forced state. The same may be said of freedom. It requires efforts. It presupposes mental and moral qualities of a high order to be generally diffused in the society where it exists. So there goes nothing. We have a lot to spin and a lot to kind of break down. So who wants to start? You start, Jairo.
So is this freedom something that occurred recently, or like within the last 3 centuries, or has there been freedom, say, 2,500 years ago when the Siddhartha appeared in India, the Buddha Shakyamuni? Was there freedom in India to allow him to think and meditate?
Well, I'll volunteer an answer to that one. I don't think there is a specific time, and if there was a time, we will never know it, because it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I would propose that in order to know that you have freedom, you have to first know you were not free before.
Yeah, I think so.
So that sets the stage for a discussion on what is freedom with regards to our mind, our understanding. Because mosquitoes that we know of, mosquitoes do not know what freedom is about. They don't know that they have the freedom to go left or right, looking for an animal to suck blood from. They don't know if that they have a freedom to take off from a twig now or 5 minutes later. So I think freedom at the onset is a very subtle, abstract, and complex notion that is only applicable to the human mind. And then we can try to define it. But it's a perspective. It's a notion. Freedom is a notion that arises and emerges from the complex human mind. I think we could agree on that.
Probably so. Yeah.
So Chris, do you have any comment on this?
I do. There's this quote from this TV show called The Handmaiden. There's this woman, what is it, Aunt Lydia. She says there's freedom to and there's freedom from, or something like that. I was trying to look for the quote, but it was just kind of interesting because in a state where, I'm not sure if anyone have seen this, but it's basically where handmaidens are, put to work, and where society has basically changed from being a democracy state to being a totalitarian regime by Gilead. But what is to say? Hold on one second. Once I find a quote, then I'll say something.
Mm-hmm. So I like that concept, Chris. Freedom to, freedom from. This brings me back to the first definition that Jairo proposed, which is more from the perspective of the Buddhist thought, which has totally everything to do with the mind and how the mind is attracted towards things and it is repelled from other things. So it goes to things, and it runs away from things. And of course, the mind is attracted to pleasant feelings, pleasant sensations, pleasant states of mind, and it is repelled by unpleasant, all of the above. So in a sense, freedom would be running towards pleasant, away from unpleasant.
I got something along those lines from Alexander the Great, a quote that he said 2,300 years ago. He says, "Through every generation of the human race, there's been a constant war, a war with fear. Those who have the courage to conquer it are made free, and those who are conquered by it are made to suffer until they have the courage to defeat it or death takes over them."
Can you read that again?
Yeah. It says, "Through every generation of the human race, there has been a constant war, a war with fear. Those who have the courage to conquer it are made free, and those who are conquered by it are made to suffer until they have the courage to defeat it or death takes them over."
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. Who did you say that came from?
Alexander the Great.
Okay.
How many times have I said this to you, David and Jairo, that life is a constant Vietnam?
Yeah, it is.
So being and again, Calhoun says the same. So it's imposed on us. Life is imposed on us. So life is a strife. If you read the Four Noble Truths by the Buddha, the first thing that he says is life is suffering. Some people say it's very very pessimistic to look at that way, but the truth is that life is a constant struggle. So Alexander the Great says it with different words, but it says the same thing. Life is a constant war. And what are we at war with? He says with fear. He says specifically that we're a constant war with fear. So what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? You know, why are we at war with fear and not with what we need to war with? You know, when I go to war, what do I fight? My enemy. But he says, no, I'm fighting my fear. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, but you're fighting your fear because you're fearful of your enemy. I mean, that's the only reason you fight. Because if you're not fearful, then you don't fight.
Yeah, but if you want to get rid of your enemy, what do you fight? Your fear or your enemy? Both. Because if you fight your fear and you don't fight your enemy, you still have an enemy. If you fight your enemy and you don't fight your fear, you're still afraid. So might as well not have taken care of your enemy because you're still afraid. So is there a relationship between fear and enemy?
Yeah, let me finish here. I have another one written down from Alexander. And he also says, now you fear punishment and beg for your lives, so I will let you free, if not for any other reason, so that you can see the difference between a Greek king and a barbarian tyrant. So do not expect to suffer any harm from me. A king does not kill messengers. He says a lot there, and just in those couple sentences.
Yes, absolutely. Magnanimity in victory. Magnanimity in victory. So that's another beautiful concept. So life is a struggle. Life is a battle. We are constantly at war with our fear of life, or death, or suffering, or not having, or not belonging, etc., etc. So I can take you back to the Maslow's pyramid of needs. So life is a constant war with fear of not fulfilling our needs. That's what I would say. And all we want is to fulfill our needs. What are our needs? That's another big question. We can talk about that in another Zoom session. So maybe we could go back to the idea of freedom and go, okay, freedom is my ability to fight the war of life mindfully, with full awareness, with self-determination. I know what I want, I know what I don't want, and I'm gonna go get it. So that I think that's what freedom is. The freedom is the self-determination to fight the war of life magnanimously. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. I got another one for you. This one here come from Plutarch. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Plutarch says the real destroyer of the liberties of people is the person who spreads among them bounties, donations, and benefits. Now this here takes a little bit of thought to think about in order to relate it, I think.
That's what I would summarize that by money for nothing. You know the song by Dire Straits?
Yeah, right.
There's nothing more dangerous than money for nothing. So if you want to undermine freedom, give stuff for free and get people used to that, so they don't have to fight their own battle of life. And then people become soft, they become complacent, and they don't do anything because they're used to being fed. That's why it's important to show somebody how to fish instead of giving them a fish. So Plutarch was very, very bright in that one.
So should we charge for this meeting?
For whoever wants to pay for it, sure, absolutely.
Should we charge for the internet? For the internet, should it be free or should we charge for it?
Well, how many people you got?
What about water? Should
Yeah.
we charge for water? It's air. Should we charge for air?
Well, those are very good questions. I think there are some fundamental needs that should not be commercialized. I agree with you. We should not
Should we
take all the
charge
air.
for medical care?
Right? Yeah. You can say no, we should not, but who's going to pay for it? You know, should we make the doctor take care of somebody for free? And how is he going to pay for his own bills? How is he going to feed his family? So those are very good questions. And I think there are some fundamental things that should never be commercialized. And that's water, air, earth. Well, earth, you're going to have to, because you have to have your little parcel, unless, you know, my place is your place is my place, and we don't have a place to stay. Any place is good to stay. But water and air, I think those are just fundamental elements that should not be commercialized, of course.
What about education?
Education is an individual thing.
Should it be free?
Education is free. Going to school is free, but somebody pays for it. We still pay for it. So
It all
it is
depends.
free.
It all depends how you look at free. Because the thing is, nothing is ever free, because
Right.
you have to take and spend time to learn whatever it is that you're going to learn. So there's a sacrifice of putting the time in. So time is, has a value to it too. So you're paying the price of spending the time, no matter what you learn. And the thing is, our institution is free to learn what they will. So they can go after what they will.
I would rephrase your questions, Jairo. What benefits should be social? And you can say that education should be a social benefit, a benefit of the collective for the individual, paid by the individual, through the collective. So basically closing the loop of the social contract. But because it's so important, health, education, and defense used to be that, because there was a lot of warring of countries, but I think we're in the 21st century, we could dispense with defense. But let's talk about health and education. I think they should be fully available to the individual from the collective, provided by the collective for the individual, and paid for by the taxes of the individual that is living and taking advantage of the collective. And I have a very I should say, a very Zen way, yin-yang way of understanding the social contract. And the two things that I believe are very important are health, and I'm talking about physical health and mental health. That's a lot, that's always been on the wayside, and now we need more mental health than physical health, because the way society has evolved, we become more complex mentally and socially, and there's a lot of strife in mental health, which is not typically not covered well, not understood well. We don't teach well about it. But I do believe that health and education should be two totally available services to the individuals, and of course they have to be paid by through taxes from the individuals.
What about car insurance? Shouldn't that be free?
Okay. That's the
the thing is, when you're talking about having something free financially versus free as freedom, those are
that's a different. It's a different thing.
You're talking about one is a value of something in the society that you live in, and the other is free as the person as a soul, as a person. They're two different things. So when the United States
but
here,
they're important for a society to function. If you don't have those covered, especially education, then the society won't work.
Yeah,
because the
education is
people
fundamental.
won't obey, won't know what to
Education,
do.
education is fundamental. Education to me is the most fundamental thing.
But
The
then if
health
you
and,
obey, then you're not free
but you can
because
decide to obey. No, 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 no. You're free if you decide to obey, not if you're made to obey. That's a different story.
but what makes you decide to obey?
Your knowledge.
There's a carrot or a stick. So you decide to obey because of the stick, that's fear, or a carrot,
Yeah,
there's a
but yeah,
benefit
but
that you see
yeah.
it
I
going
could say,
forward.
yeah, of course. If you don't like society, you can step out of society and go live with the monkeys in the jungle. Good luck with that. So of course you want to belong to society because you are human and you are gregarious. We're not really human if we're not living with other humans. We don't participate, create, collaborate with other humans.
So
That's what
we
makes
can
us human.
decide to wear the mask. We can, if we live in California, we're wearing a mask out of fear that if we get caught not wearing a mask, we might get fined.
Not necessarily. Some
Here
people
in
wear the
Florida, we decide to wear the mask because it's the right thing to do,
right
because
thing to do. It's the right thing to
supposedly
do. Yeah.
it may protect someone else if since we don't know that we may have it, because there's uh, the possibility that we may be individually be asymptomatic. So we should assume that we've got it and then wear the mask. So we should take that route of logically, and then we wear it. We choose to by our thinking, our logical thinking, and care for others. We decide to wear it, and not because we're told to, but we can choose to wear it.
Did you mute yourself? Yes, you did.
Yes.
Chris, what do you think about all this rigmarole we're going around?
Honestly, I think the point Jairo was making in regards to education being free, I guess medical care being free, housing being free, and being, I guess, whether it's like a want to obey versus, forced to obey. Of course, those in line, depending on who you are and, if you're more of an individualist or community type of person, but in reality, like you're saying, eventually, as humans, and it's not just humans but animals too, we want to belong. We want to come as a collective. We want to be part of community.
Yes.
And so, in essence, it's kind of like you have to weigh and, I guess, battle, in essence, your wants versus the needs or
Absolutely.
wants of others.
Absolutely.
And it's difficult because for some, it's kind of like they have their own moral or spiritual battles within themselves when it comes to freedom.
Yeah.
For some people, they want to just kind of, I guess, not have to pay for housing, education, medical care. In essence, I mean, all that is in a form, if you think about it, and I don't want to be, I guess, like, dwell on the past, because, like, I guess the Buddhist thing is to not think about the past, or, to think more forward, thinking and progressing and kind of flow with where you're at currently.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, if you think about it, education, how did that stem from? Where did it stem from? Because back in the days, like the natives and just general tribes, in different cultures, the Aztecs, all different types of people, they were individuals, but, collective. And how
Yes.
did they learn? Where did they get their education from? They learned it
Yes.
from each other. There was no
Yes.
fee for it, but as a community, they bartered. They were able to build houses. They were able to advance in technology and weapons and education and housing and things of that sort. And it's similar to the what's the group now? The Amish people here, where they're still in the back of, they're not really progressing in technology like we are. They're not really
Yes.
I guess, forced to do a lot of the things or progress similar to us, but
Absolutely.
they still pay for land because it's part of a requirement for society, and they still follow many of the rules that we do, but they still do their own, I guess, bartering and working as a collective without having to exchange money for paying for shelter, education, because they all teach each other and they all work as a collective. The only thing that's different is they do it for the community versus whereas they're bound to doing it all for everybody else. I don't know if that makes sense. So.
Makes a
And
makes a lot of sense.
And I also found a quote for the one I was speaking of, and she was saying, there is more than one kind of freedom. Like I said, freedom to and freedom from. In days of anarchy, it was freedom to. Now you're being given freedom from. Don't underrate it. So again, it goes in line with what you were saying before with you and Jairo. It's just kind of like, it's your perspective. Some people, they fear as though, like with police, they need freedom from in this day in life. And then there's some that are like, you know what, we need freedom to be able to have our police forces.
Of course.
And it all depends on, your level of fear to and from and who, and what as well. So, yeah.
So true. So true. You made a powerful point. You went back to when human gatherings were simpler. Years ago, where there were smaller clans and individuals within the clan would still learn. They improve their techniques. Agriculture was one of them, and then we had technical advancements, and then we had the Industrial Revolution and all that. It all comes from all of us together as a human conglomerate, and we have a culture, the human culture. So we learn from each other. We want to be in, because we know that we cannot stay outside. We cannot be who and what we are on our own. And even if we were on our own, I always ask this because I always talk about the social contract, which you have described in its beauty, the whole thing. The social contract I see as a quiet understanding, or almost like a, do not question this understanding, where the individual is productive and gets along within the collective. And then the collective as a whole also has that responsibility to take care of the individual. So it has to go both ways. That's why in my own political view, I always think this way. If I were on my own, if I was in a society of one, myself, would I have to work? Yes, I would have to work. I would have to defend myself against the elements. I would have to protect myself against rain and wind. I would have to build a shelter. I would have to find the materials to build it. I would have to find food, either go hunting or plant something or learn how to, what to eat, etc., etc. So an individual of one has to work, or it just dies away. Well, the same applies for a society of two. a collective of two, well, now you have two individuals that want to stay alive, survive, and they have to work. But the advantage is that two can help each other. Whereas when you're on your own, nobody helps you. It's just nature against you, you are against nature. So with you have two people, well, when you're building the shelter, one can hold the pole, the other one can tie it. It's much faster, more efficient, and so on and so forth. So as the collective grows, the individuals are still the same, but just the complexity of the collective grows. So you have a big collective of humanity, and then you have sub-collective, maybe countries and this and that, and then it goes down from the collective of humanity all the way down to collective of your own family, your neighborhood, your job, your community, etc., etc. But it's always the same thing. The individual has to work, has to produce, and then because that individual is in a collective, it has to collaborate and create and get along and play with the rest of the other individuals. So that's why the individuals that think that the collective should give them something for nothing in return, that is a big mistake, because if nobody does anything, there is no collective and there is no individual, because if you don't work, nothing happens. So one thing that needs to be understood, I think, from everybody is like, there's no free ticket. And David, you were saying that somehow before, is like, there's no free ticket. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to work for it. And the best way to understand this and to have a more harmony within the individual and within the collective is that we all have to pitch in. We all have to work. And then within our means, we all work. We all pay taxes. So then the collective is able to allocate those taxes to better serve the individuals. And of course, that should be for the individuals that are having a harder time coping for whatever reason, because they live in an area that has less food, or they live in an area where education was, or they live in an area that was decimated by social problems, wars, social tensions, inequalities, etc., etc. So in today's collective, in today's world, we have, in our nation here, we have a lot of problems that stem from inequalities and awful differences in society, the lack of the collective taking care of the individual. And so these are very old problems that have very difficult solutions, but I think they do have solutions. It just takes a lot of work, a lot of sitting down, finding common will and working towards that. But it just takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm thinking here, about what you're saying. And, the thing is, freedom is in the words that we speak, I feel. Because the thing is, if you use words, okay, that don't represent their original or well, there's actually two definitions for words. There's a common understanding for words, and then there's an original understanding for words. And these are somewhat very, very different. But the thing is, when words are taken and twisted to mean something that they don't, then a person is actually believing in a lie. And when you believe in a lie is believing in something that don't exist. So when you're going down that road of something that doesn't exist, eventually, you get to the end, and then you find out that, really not real. And unfortunately, throughout time, there has been periods of time where they have taken and tried to control language, and it goes back, number one, to me, to Constantine, and even before that, when Rome came out with the Latin language, okay, to supersede the Greek language. But they took a lot of the same things and the same gods and give them a new name, and actually what it did more than anything else was to confuse things. Then comes along Christianity with Constantine, And then the next thing you know, now they're burning books and just, just getting rid of everything that they think is wrong. And so it can once again control society and the words and things that people believe. And right now we're going through that same sort of thing, the way I feel, because of the fact that the internet is trying to take and control definition through the internet by saying that this means that or that means this or whatever, without looking at the variables, without looking at the synonyms, because the internet is not geared, okay, for variables. It's only geared for, hey, if you don't understand this, then you're not going along with what I'm saying. And the thing is, the human mind and the human communication form comes in many different ways. I mean, we tell innuendos, and we have, say different forms of myths and stories and things. And all these things exist in a normal society for people. But what happens is, the government or the governing people at the time, and right now, I think it's more the internet than anything, in trying to take and control language so that everybody says the same thing, sees the same thing. And to me, this is just nothing more than tyranny in its own way. But I think that there is what affects our freedom more than anything else. And the thing is, it's up to each individual to take and do their own searches to find out what people are saying to them, to know if they're being lied to or if they're being told the truth. So the thing is, we have so much deception in our society today that half the people think that the lie is the truth and the truth is the lie. So, this goes on all sides of the spectrum.
Do you guys think there's more deception today than there was 100 years ago? 200 years ago?
I believe it's easier to deceive nowadays than being able to deceive back then. I do have a question though. What would be the greatest obstacle for the community versus the community and collective? Because I mean, you said that we're able to the web you described. It sounds logical. It sounds reasonable, but the outside factors also, it just seems like there's so many factors involved to make it seem like a utopia. Granted, it would be ideal, where everyone works, work on themselves eternally as an individual, in essence, become productive to a community as a collective. But it just seems like so many factors involved that makes it impossible. So what would be like some ways or to remedy that?
Yeah. I have an idea, Chris, if I may.
And maybe, I'm not sure what your name is, because I know
Louis.
I know David and I know Jairo, but I'm not
Yes.
sure who you are.
My name is Louis.
Louis, okay.
Louis, yes. And I've known Jairo for many years now. David is a newer acquaintance and friend, but Jairo and I go back a long ways. So my proposition to fix the inequalities and the dissension and the distension in the collective, based on my original assumption, is that we have to work in order to take care of ourselves as individuals. And even when we are a collective, we still have to work, cooperating, collaborating with each other to take care of ourselves as a collective. I have formulated the following kind of social contract. I say, well, the individual has the responsibility, the obligation to be productive within the collective. How are you productive? By working, of course, because that was set up at the beginning, because I knew that being by myself, I had to work no matter what. So just because I am with 2, I still have to work. If I'm with 100, I still have to work. And if I'm with 2 billion, I still have to work. But in working means that I work, I produce, I pay my taxes, and I do that in a civil, way. I get along. I follow the rules. So I do believe strongly in a democratic way. You know, where we vote for laws and we follow them, and if we don't like them, we change them. So I am very, very democratic in that sense. So, but there is an obligation of the collective towards the individual, and that is absolutely fundamental. If the individual has the obligation to play by the rules and work and pay taxes and get along with, you know, everybody else, the collective has the reverse obligation. That is to guarantee that the individual can work and guarantee that he has the knowledge and the education to know the rules of the game. So, you know, you cannot be a mindless individual and function in society. You have to be educated. So that's why I feel education is fundamental. It has to be provided. It is a right, a guarantee. And so education and health must be a guarantee.
And you might want
but since somebody has to pay for it, and it has to be paid with taxes of the individuals towards the collective, I feel, and this is the most important thing that, you know, when I say it, a lot of people kind of look at me like you're crazy. The collective government or the society we live in, the country, must guarantee that if I want to work tomorrow, I can go ahead and punch in and go to work and get paid for it.
Luis.
Hey,
Luis.
How you doing?
All right.
Hello, Rami.
Jairo, you have something to say, and I want you to be able to say it first because
Yes, I was going to complete Luis' theory of happy society by adding that
the social
yes,
contract. The
yes,
social
the
contract.
social contract must include meaningful work with decent wages.
Yes, it have to be yes, decent wages. Very important.
And Luis says that it should guarantee that every able-bodied worker has available work for them. So there should be zero unemployment or pretty close.
Well, the only unemployed would be the people that cannot, because of physical, very harsh physical conditions, quadriplegic people that are also, they cannot be on the phone, for example. You know, you can have somebody that's paralyzed, but that can still take phone calls and help people, do social work, et cetera, et cetera. So it would be, that would have to be somehow legislated, understood, and really managed. But any able body should be working. Somebody that is completely disabled, whether physically or mentally, those are the exemptions.
I also want to add or complete Luis's social contract by acknowledging that the people that work are, could we not classify them as the working class? Because in the collective, there probably has to be a class that does not have to work, and those would be the upper class that oversees the society somehow, that manages the capital.
You still have to,
and the resources.
Listen,
maybe it involves a managerial class that is part of the working class, but they're the very top of the society that steers the society in certain directions.
If you have a lot of work,
and they perhaps don't really work per se, they're kind of just there making sure everything's working. They don't.
Well,
I
that's
don't know
work
if you can
anyway.
call that work.
Yeah, it's not. It's not
Yeah, like
manual work. It's not
maybe
physical work.
they oversee society so much that they set their own salaries, kind of like Congress does. So
Okay.
do they really work? I guess they do, but
Of course, they work.
they're
They work for
supposed to.
themselves for sure.
They work for themselves.
Let me ask you something, both of you guys. 'Cause Jairo, I know that you're single. Luis, are you married or single?
I'm married. I'm a married man.
You have any children?
Yep, 2.
Okay. I think you're both under the spell of Plato.
Oh boy, I thought I was free.
In the seeds
I'll
of
be darned. Wait a minute.
you've provided us, and Jairo, that you've filled in some details on, are the seeds of tyranny. You both appear, at least, to think that work is the goal. Work is not the goal. Freedom is the goal.
Work is
Freedom
a necessity.
I'm sorry?
Work is a necessity. Freedom
Work is a
bonus.
necessity, but freedom is the goal. And I'll tell you why. Because as you increase in populations, as soon as you start applying tools, then the amount of work necessary to support the collective, which that's a phrase that you've introduced. The number of people it takes to, it's people times tools. The number of people necessary soon drops off in terms of workers in order to provide the necessities, whatever the necessities are.
And more today because of automation.
Exactly. I mean, I know this because I've written some automation that's literally removed jobs and removed needs for people out of the headquarters of the company I was working at to have to go fly across the world
I
anymore.
know where you're going with this. If I may answer your first point, I agree with you that as you become more efficient, more technologically savvy, you need less people to do the same work. Okay, no problem. So that does not, and I can prove the point right now. Go out in the street, look around you, and see if we are fulfilling all the needs of ourselves, individuals, and the collective. And the answer is no. The answer is no, because the streets are dirty. There are people living under bridges. There are people that need health care and they don't have it. They need mental health care and they don't have it. There are people that are destitute and nobody's taking care of them. So the collective, they cannot take care of themselves, or maybe they don't want to. That's a question, but we can manage that too. And then, but obviously, no matter how technological we become, no matter how the private workforce does not need any more people, the social responsibility of the collective towards the individual is not met, and we have to take care of that. If I put everybody that's out of work right now to clean streets, to clean rivers, to clean the beaches, to take care of people that are in the street, forsaken, to take care of the homeless, to take care of the people that are depressed in their corner, the people that are suffering, I could employ the whole of the population. And of course, that is not free because we all pay for it through the taxes that we pay when we work. And the people that are doing social work are also paying taxes. So everybody pays. No money for nothing, no chicks for free.
And that exemplified how you're under the spell, because you said, if I. Okay. You just went from a we to an I. And Jairo hinted at this. He said, well, I mean, isn't there, because he already started to build the hierarchy in his head. The spell of Plato is the idea that you have these philosopher kings who run the show.
I didn't talk
think-
about any philosopher
They're
kings.
philosophy kings. They could be financial oligarchy. They could
Oh,
be
no, I didn't
entrenched
talk about that.
bureaucracy.
Yeah,
They-
but
they-
Jairo said that. I
they could
didn't
be
say that.
monarchs, but it's philosophy kings. That's the
No,
spell.
I didn't mention that Jairo did. In my perfect utopia, everybody pays. Everybody collaborate. The individual always pays for the collective because that's the price to pay to be in the collective. So even if you have a lot of money, let's say that you have great education, you have a lot of money, and you don't have to work for a living, you still have to pay for being part of the collective. That's your tax. That's giving back to the collective that made you, that allowed you, gave you the factors to become rich and affluent and smart.
Right.
So there is no king here. Because in my collective, you and I are exactly this. We are human beings trying to make a living together, trying to get along.
Yes.
And the more culture, the more understanding, the more cooperation, collaboration. So no king. Thank you very much. No smart guy telling me how to live my life. No, excuse me.
No,
I know what I need. You know what I mean?
You cannot do that. Orwell showed that you cannot do that. In fact, the collective has a set of people who rewrite the language. In other words, the operating system that people use so that they can't even think in terms or necessarily see that they're being directed according to a certain philosophy.
Well, we go back to the very first definition of freedom that we gave at the beginning of this conversation, which is a self-direction. You have to, if you know what's going on and you decide, then you're free. A slave in Egypt, pulling a big stone behind him and being lashed 20 times per second, could be free. Not physically, but mentally, yes. So life is a struggle. Society is a struggle. Going to work is a struggle. Paying your bills is a struggle. Life is a struggle. There's no doubt about it. But as long as you know, as long as you, in your own self-reflective awareness, you know what the heck's going on and what you can do about it or what you cannot do about it, if you can, make any changes or escape, say, okay, well, this is not a good condition. I don't want to be a slave in Egypt. So the first occasion, the first chance I have, I'm getting the heck out of here. Forget it. That is a free man. If I am living in society right now and I see my society in strife, inequalities, no changes, my thing would be, I don't need to run anywhere because at the end of the day, I'm okay here. I'm not a slave pulling a stone. But I feel that maybe I should make some changes in the politics of this country. I'm aware that, wait a minute, let me finish this. This is very important. I should make some changes politically in this country. And I know that whether I vote for one or for the other, it's not going to change. So so I need to make my own political party, my common sense party.
Is democracy overrated?
No.
When did democracy happen? And David Norton might know about when they tried democracy in the Greek era.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
it failed in certain cases when it became a mob rule.
Everything fails, Jairo.
You have to take a look at why democracy failed. And the thing is, it's no different today than it was then. Because the thing is, it's said over and over again, two things that bring down a country is cronyism and nepotism.
Right.
And what happens with that in a democracy is people get in office and then they take and put their friends in office. They stay in office forever. Right. And the thing is, there's no turnover. So the thing is, you're constantly having the same people control the other same people. And eventually the people get fed up with what's going on and the democracy fails. And usually it turns into, anarchy of some sort. I mean, this is nothing new. And you can take and look at these quotes from over 2,000 years ago as to how this whole thing falls apart and becomes a mess. And the thing is, even right now, you have people in Washington, D.C. that have lived there and been doing their jobs for 50, 70 years. And, you know, the thing is, when they do that, they're in bed with all their friends and families and
Well,
whoever is there, okay,
I
so
would
they can
propose,
control our society.
David, that and Jairo, that democracy is not perfect as a system, but it's the least worst of all systems.
But we don't have democracy.
Okay.
We have what Republicans call a republic
Right. A
with
democratic republic.
representation.
Well, listen, we can criticize
And
the
so
system.
when we go to vote, we're voting for
Okay, change it,
what is
Jairo.
no, it's converted into
Yeah.
delegates,
Yes,
and they're
I
the ones that
understood.
do the
And
voting.
listen, we all know the problems that we have, but criticizing the system is not going to change it anyway.
No,
So
but
either we build something different.
we have to understand
So
what's going on.
yes,
And
yes,
also, if there was perfect democracy, there could be mob rule, and there could be voting by passion and lack of knowledge of what's going on, and
Yeah.
so we could end up with somebody that's totally going to ruin the society.
listen,
Or
I
in all levels of
of course,
society, like
of course.
down to the
Listen,
city level.
I make a comparison here. In my work, I'm a manager. I manage a business, and it's a collective. The business that I manage is a collective of human beings, of individuals.
All
And
businesses,
I'm sorry,
all businesses are collective.
it's just like that. You know,
Governments are all
a
collective.
country is a business. You know, the business of life, but it's a business. So you have to see what the problems are. Nothing is perfect in life. If you think that something is perfect in life, then you are outside of the human realm. Mosquitoes may think life is perfect. They don't know any better. But human beings, because we are so complex in our way of thinking, we always find something that would be better. You know, whatever our utopic situation is, it's up to each mind. But again, we need to remember we're a collective, so we have to agree on what heaven and earth should look like. But so all changes have to be deliberated properly. When I make changes in the business, when I make decisions, when I say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I am very careful to think the over deliberately. Okay, so what is the problem? What is the perceived problem? Because sometimes I think there's a problem, but it's not a problem. So you have to talk, you have to get people together, you have to say, okay, so what do you think about this and that and the other? There's always, you know, a whole array of considerations and opinions, but at the end of the day, well, I have to make the call. And in a sense,
Who is making the call?
I make the call through the votes of the individuals because
Who
I
are
am very
you
democratic.
to make the call? Are you
I
the
am-
king?
I get the votes. I'm the
I
political party, the common sense
Yeah,
party.
I think what
They
he's
vote for
saying is
me.
the votes counted is what he ends up
That's
making
right.
for everyone. So like if
Very good,
everyone
Chris.
voted 1%, everyone gets a
Very
vote.
good.
So you tally it
Yes.
up, and then that ends up being what ends up being
See?
done.
Excellent, Chris.
Versus it being just his opinion and saying, hey, you know what, this is it. But I
That's
do
right.
have Rami, your question, or I guess your statement regarding automation. Yes, of course, and just society in itself. And I don't know if this will make sense or not, but yes, as time progresses and as history, continues, of course, a lot of things become automated, and yes, people become to the point where I don't want to use isolate or whatever, become absolute or whatever.
Obsolete, right?
Thank you.
That's what you're trying to say? Yeah, they're redundant.
It's
We don't need you
dead.
anymore.
Exactly.
We have machines
Thank
now.
you.
Get out of my collective. I don't need you anymore because, I have machines doing the work of 1,000 of you. So please disappear in my life. You're very inconvenient to me. Thank you.
Yes, that's the word. I'm trying to remember it. But
Right.
but the thing is, we as humans, and again, back to what everyone's, I guess, general thing is education. So every machine takes away one person's job, but as time goes by, I don't know if you guys are aware of this or if you've noticed it, we as humans are able to become fallible. So we invent new ways to find jobs, to find a means of surviving, you know, and in that turn makes it where, I don't know, where we expand in not just technology, but new ways of innovation, you know, because, but
how's that happen?
Huh?
How does that come about? Is that come about naturally through innovation or prayer?
I think it becomes a combination of just force and naturally, you know, because when you're in a state of, think of it as like the caveman, you know, the caveman, he needed to find a means to basically survive. So he ended up creating fire. Why? Because he was forced to, you know, not only forced to, but he was forced because he needed to as well. You know, it was something he wanted. Now, if he didn't, then he would not have survived. So in turn, he ended up finding a means to create fire. And because of that, he was able to survive. I mean, granted, there might be a female too. I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, but anyhow, so then it's the same thing with, like, in this day and age, a lot of us are out of jobs. So now we have to struggle to figure out ways to make an income. You know, a lot of companies, in essence, use the internet to ship things. Before, it used to be people would go to department stores or have you, and now it's like everything's becoming online. You know, people doing things online, whereas like, because I know a lot of businesses, they didn't want to do the online thing because they were like, you know what, why? I have no need to, I don't want to. But now because of this pandemic, it's forced them. And then a lot of them now, they say, well, being online has actually increased their revenue, you know? So it's kind of like it's in life, sometimes it's not one or the other, but just having a combination of both, or maybe several other things, you know. I think also sometimes when you're forced but want to change or something like that, not forced as a means of being like rape or coerced or anything like that, but like, you know, like having a jump kind of force, you know, like, I don't know how to describe it, but then you use your mental capacity to get yourself out of a situation. That's if you can or if you want to. And I'm not sure if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we as humans, I would hope that we have enough intellect, Jesus Christ, I cannot speak, intellect, in order to, you know, get ourselves to the next hump or to the next boulder or to the next innovative way to get things. Granted, will it be better? Who knows? It all, again, it's perspective, you know, but it will get us to a different way of life. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. You were saying how as we become more technical dependent, we are forced to, just like the caveman was forced to just come up with what about that fire there that just came down from a lightning bolt? How can I use that? And sure enough, it could cook stuff and get warmed up in the cave. So it was a necessity that they needed to I mean, they were forced somehow by evolution or by life. And that's the same here. I mean, here we are a little bit smarter than the caveman. So we are able to manage things. We are able to assess the situation, what's going on here. Is it normal to have a society with a 15 or a 20% unemployment? What does that do? You know, it's like looking at a body with a cancer growing in the liver. It's not good. It's not gonna work. It's gonna be painful, and it's going to end up in death. So my solution to that, and I stand strong on my idea, is to provide guaranteed social work, and that's part of the deal. That's part of the social contract. And maybe we are becoming more technical. We have become less humanistic as societies. I think everybody will agree with me that the way things are going in the 21st century, yes, technology, beautiful, we're doing great, AI and all that stuff, we're smart, but as a collective, we are sick. We are sick. The people, the individual within the collective is suffering from a psychosomatic existential syndrome. We don't find meaning, we don't find hope, we just don't believe in anything. All we find are problems. We can't get a flipping job. The budget is always like, can we spend more in education? No. Can we spend more in healthcare? No. But if there comes a pandemic, all of a sudden we pull a credit card and we whip $3 trillion out. Wait a minute. I thought we didn't have any money. Where did this come from? So we are being somehow bamboozled. There's no doubt about it. The political system is not up to the obligation of the collective towards the individual. The individual is being strained, led astray. We don't know what the heck is going on. And truly, we need to start thinking in very simple terms. It's like, how do we fix this problem? And my managerial brain tells me, okay, I think the solution is to provide work. It's that simple. You want to work, you show up tomorrow, 8 o'clock in the morning, you punch in, and you are paid for what you're doing. We will tell you what to do. You can clean rivers, you can clean the beaches, you can help people. You are a psychologist. You don't have any job. Nope. Well, you're a psychologist.
What
right?
about
okay. We will bring you people so
universal
you can help them, et cetera, et cetera.
income? What about a base universal income, such as perhaps $2,000
Absolutely.
a week?
Absolutely, yes. Well,
No,
we can talk about that. But basically, it's universal
everyone
work.
gets it.
If you get universal work, then
So you don't
get
have to
universal
worry
income.
about telling people what to do. Okay, you go clean this street.
They're not going to do it.
I've got 3 things to add here.
Yes.
All right.
The main thing I think is really going to increase the understanding of the collective here. So hopefully I've got your buy-in with that tease. The mosquito consciousness may or may not be aware of the fact that its #1 existential threat is being crushed.
I don't believe they are. If not, they would not get close to us.
The flies at least seem to be large enough to understand, because they'll move quick. If you try to swat it.
Yeah. We still get them though.
In Osceola County, the county just south of where I live, I can get there in probably 11 or 12 minutes. The unemployment rate is, I think, last I read, 31.6%. There's already a, so the housing of last resort is usually extended stay motels.
Yeah.
In our newspaper, the Orlando Sentinel, in this past week, it's been described that that we're looking at a wave of evictions and homelessness. There's already a motel in Osceola where 40 to 60 families are living. And back on June 20th, the electricity to that entire motel for all those families was already shut off. Because before the rules were set up that you can't do that, it was already done. Because that motel stopped being able to pay its electric bill back in February, which is what that Committee of 8 declared was when the recession started. So we're talking about 40 to 60 families since June 20th who've all been stuffed into this hotel because that's their best option, who have no electricity, and that is the economic reality today.
How is it in Orange County? Not as bad?
Well, I think Orange County it's the heart of the Seminole, Orange, and Osceola are, those were all creations starting with Orange County. In the 19th century, it was all one county. It was Mosquito County. So we need to understand the economics. And in order to understand the economics, we have to look at, I think we have to go back to the classical liberals. The time from between feudalism and capitalism and before socialism, okay? And the key there that the moral philosopher was the term that was assigned to economics, the study of economics, the science of economics at the time. People like Adam Smith or Cresore or Blackstone or John Locke. These people all understood, and the French physiocrats as well, these people all understood that when it comes to production, and we are not taught this, by the way, we did not get this in 20th century public education. When it comes to production, there are three factors: natural resources, labor, and capital. You can think of capital simply as tools. Just that, just tools. Okay, it might have been Abraham Lincoln who said that the first capital is labor, because when you take your labor and apply it to the land, you're able to produce a tool. All right, and these tools are what create efficiencies, and these efficiencies enable a collective so that not everyone necessarily has to be working all the time. In other words, here's another side of the whole situation. You've got to have a recognition of the fact that not all work is paid. Someone who raises a child, someone who does the dishes at home.
My Common Sense Party will pay for that.
I appreciate that, Louis.
Yeah, because it's very simple. If a man, let's say that, in the old ways, a man goes to work, he's married, his wife stays home with the kids. So his minimum wage, working a social work, we're talking about there is no work, there's 20% unemployment, and this gentleman goes to the social work program. He says, hey, there's no work out there, I can't find anything. Give me a punch card, I'm going to punch in. And this gentleman is going to make a minimum wage that's going to be based on two things: where he lives, his zip code. Because zip code X, the cost of living is this. Zip code Y is that much. So it has to be, and that is easy. You can go to the reports and hey, what is the regular cost of living in New York? This much. What is the regular cost of living in this much? So that minimum wage should be adapted to that, but also to the fact that he has a wife that prefers to stay home to take care of the kids because she feels that's the best way. So that in my Common Sense Party, that is allotted for.
There's a risk involved in that. That risk is, someone's going to say, well, wait a moment, is that mother doing her job? So what do? Do you install cameras in the home, in every room of the home, to make sure that the butts are being wiped while the children are being potty trained, so that the collective can look in and make sure your dishes are done on time?
Those are very good questions, Rami.
You could put sensors in the washing machine, dishwashing machine. And
well, I will say this for the defense of the common sense party, is that we cannot fix everything at once. we'll get to that problem. We'll get to that problem later. How about that? Jesus,
Chris, if that's what you want to share, I want
you
to
don't want to come. You don't want a political party. You want a magician with a wand.
Well, no, it's only because I've thought about these things in advance.
I know.
I've already come up with these questions.
But those are very good questions. Just like in a business, you have to prioritize the problems and work in the priority order. You have to agree. You have to vote everybody and go, okay, we're going to work on this first, and this is second, and this is third. So yours will be somewhere down the line. But the first thing to do is to get that guy to work.
Well, okay,
right?
all right.
What if he can't work because he's overweight?
We already went through that.
We yeah, it's called disability.
Yeah. Well,
so
could
yes,
he be paid to get on the treadmill, and the treadmill is
listen, we can talk.
keeping track of how much calories, and that's converted to pennies, and he gets paid.
That's a very good
direct deposit to his bank.
Listen, we could put people on bicycles and produce energy. You put a little, and I'm telling you, you can pay for that because it's a renewable energy. It's clean, and people lose weight, so they become healthier. We can talk about the obesity problem. This is a real society problem, an individual problem. We need to reframe the problem. We need to understand the causes and the solutions. That's a very important problem. I say the next bubble is going to be healthcare because of the obesity in the population.
So your question in regards to having to, I guess, look into the person who is the homemaker, I see it as, this similar to, because if you think about it, if a woman or a husband decides to stay home, they're saving buku bucks on childcare, because childcare is expensive. For every child, it's like, God, I don't have to do that anymore, but it's like.
Me neither, thank God.
It's an arm and a leg, it's like $200 a week. So if a husband or a wife decides to stay home and take care of the kids, and for the collective to find out, to question, hey, how are they necessarily doing their job? You can just simply look at the family. When they go out, are they clean? Can they speak? Because if you look at it, you'd be able to tell if the mother or the husband is actually doing their job. Because if they're not doing their job, let's say the kid's not talking, or they don't know how to behave in the presence of others, they don't know how to just do the general things in life, then we can, I guess, a reasonable mind can conclude, hey, you know what? This parent is not really teaching, or I guess, quote unquote, caring, yes, for the kids as they're supposed to. That would be one way to distinguish if they are or if they're not. I'm not a big fan of surveillance and dictating, or, but it's just, because no one stays in their home besides me forever and ever. I'm kidding. But no one stays in their home to the extreme of never being seen, unless, of course, they're bedridden, where they literally are in a hospital, or they're having oxygen, things of that sort. But normally, as a family, you would go out, you know, and enjoy life, to the park, things of that sort. If the kid cannot run, if the kid cannot interact with their friends, and their friends are talking about a certain subject and they cannot interact with them, then that'll be like a
Yes.
telltale sign that, hey, you know what? The parent is not teaching them the ABCs, the language, the ways of, you know, what science is about, that the sky is technically not blue. It's just, you know, different types of elements that
Yes.
are in play. That's
Chris,
how I would think we would be
Chris,
able
you're
to
absolutely right.
tell
You're
if the
absolutely right.
person is actually, we don't need to have cameras or have policing of the person. Hey, let me go into your home and make sure that you're doing X, Y, and Z. Because even people who are in general jobs, you know, don't have someone overlooking their shoulder. You know, they know that, hey, if I send in a report that, you know, they did something. Sometimes they don't even show their work for like 3 weeks, a month, you know, things of that sort. I don't know.
You're
That's just
absolutely
my.
right, Chris. That was beautiful. As a matter of fact, there's another way to alleviate the problem of ignorance, because when a parent doesn't take care of their kids, it's sheer ignorance, obviously, probably because they were not cared for either before, because we haven't been teaching psychology and humanism in school. Go figure. But we could fix that by investing, instead of investing in more nuclear submarines or bombers. We could invest in educational channels, humanistic, social educational channels that broadcast to the population what it is to be a good parent, how to take care of kids, the do's and don'ts, how patience in the home is important, etc., etc., etc. We don't see this anywhere. The internet doesn't teach it unless you really look for it. We don't talk about that in school. This is another thing that the Common Sense Party would do, which would be to improve education by adding humanism in schools, philosophy, psychology, sociology, economics, etc. So the kids, instead of learning what the tangent is like and the stuff that they never use in their life, I'm not saying we're not going to teach that, but along with that, we could teach sociology, psychology, philosophy, getting along, civism, how to take care of your family, how to wipe your butt, things that we don't teach the kids. And we need to teach the kids that in school, and we need to teach the population on TV and the radio, on the internet, and make available this humanistic revolution where, okay, let's get back to our senses, guys. And that's how somehow you'll be able to make sure that the mom that stays home is taking care of the kids properly.
Okay, so here's the risk. The risk is that we encourage everyone to become judges. Not judges according to thought per the individual situation, but judges in accordance with the training.
Aren't we judges of our lives?
No, you're saying what this logically leads to is small townism, where people spend more time minding other people's business than their own.
Of course we should. We live in a collective.
Hold on now. Not so fast. The trouble with small townism is that the only person who really has an understanding with what's going on are the people doing the work. However, if you make it a situation where everyone's a judge, determining in accordance with the broadcast training, the conditioning, in other words.
But you're assuming the broadcast training is going to be a bamboozling and gaslighting. I'm talking about common sense training, common sense humanity.
The absolute best state-of-the-art, top line, all the experts agree is the best training available.
I think we have a good understanding of what it is to get along, be nice, and caring. It doesn't take a NASA engineer to do that.
Right, yes, but what you're describing is a different situation. The risk is that you're encouraging people to judge others in according to a standard derived from a set of people in a set of time. Well, our problems evolve over time. And the training, the thing about education, especially higher education, is if you want to learn how to do something 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, or according to a set of rules that are a century old, then you rely upon the experts. But if you want to know how to solve a problem right now, the thinking, the level of thinking that took place previously isn't necessarily up to the task of solving the problems of today. And that's how Eastern society, this happened in China, this happened in the Islamic world. They come to this height, they establish these orders, and then things de-evolve. Because the active process of applying human ingenuity to solving the problems lessens, while the idea of sticking to the norm increases. And then that creates a world of externality.
What I was talking about, does that sound like extremist or dogmatic or anything? I mean,
I think you've got the seeds of it all in there.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I think I hear your concerns, Rami, but my take on it was just general understanding of just, I mean, realistically, I think as humans, we like, okay, so I hear your concern loud and clear, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you know, if you plant a seed, there's a chance that it will grow. And when it grows, there's weeds and it gets out of control. But where I was coming from is that we as humans need to have faith as well. Okay. And without that, you know, it's kind of like we might as well just be policing and surveillancing everyone. You know, my thing is if a parent is, you know, is a homemaker and taking care of their child, I would think that it would be the benefit of the parent to do what's best for their child. And me as part of the collective would anticipate that the mother would want that for their child, you know, so therefore I wouldn't have to police and therefore I would not have to judge. Granted, that would happen. Of course, we're all going to judge to some degree or whatever, you know, that's just humanistic of us to do. Well, is there a way to eradicate that? Possibly, but I'm not concerned about that, to be honest, at the moment, because we are humans and we're flawed, you know. But I understand there's ways to, you know, correct what we want that is flawed if we want to. Because again, for me, I don't believe in forcing people to do things they don't want to. You know, because if you force people to do things they don't want to, their heart's not in it. It becomes sloppy. It becomes not valuable in any shape or form. But back to the parenting of, you know, of the household. Again, at the end of the day, it's faith. As a collective, if you would have faith in your group, you would have faith that the mother or the father would take care of their child by teaching them what is reasonable in order to, I guess, produce or be part of the collective, whatever that means for the collective, you know, similar to, and I know I keep bringing this up, but the Amish people, you know, it's like everyone has a role, you know, I'm pretty sure they have faith that, hey, you know what, this person's going to do what they need to do in order to complete this. This person has this job, and, you know, you just have to have faith that they're going to do it at the best of their ability, you know, not the best of the ability of me or this person or that person. Of course, this is just, you know, wishful thinking on my part and seeing it in a greater scheme of things, you know, but if you put that into, I guess, reality form or whatnot, then it's just kind of like there's always going to be flaws. But that's just my solution.
Chris,
you know,
you're so right.
For your question that you have, that's just, I don't know.
Chris, you're
Does
absolutely
that make
right.
any sense? I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense. You're on point. And yes, in some Amish families, there's going to be disruption. The father is going to be OCPD and he's going to mistreat everybody, or the mother is going to be whatever. So there's always that exception to the overall rule where humans typically tend to play nice. So we don't have to police everybody and hey, what are you doing with your kids there? So you are right on point. You are looking at it, and rather than faith, I would talk about the positive outlook with expectation of the humanity going forward instead of going backwards. So I like everything you have to say, Chris. I think we are looking at this from the very same perspective. The devil is in the details. How do we manage that? But the fundamentals, I think we agree on that. So bravo to you.
All right. Let me continue the idea of expanding the collective understanding with respect to the economics. I view economics as the study of human decisions. That's the definition I'm going to apply to that placeholder word. There are a lot of definitions to economics. That's the one I'm operating under. The study of human decisions. When you're talking about
Schopenhauer, we call that the human will, but it's all right. It's the same thing.
Okay, thank you for that. When we're talking about, let's go back to how the classical liberals understood what were the means of production, because the economics that most of us were taught just eliminated or underplayed or subsumed natural resources into capital, labor and capital. When you take the three factors of production, natural resources, labor, and capital, and you reduce them down into two, capital and labor, which is what Marx did, then you can apply Hegel's dialectic and move a society any which way you want. Marxists are a billionaire's best friend. You have to understand natural resources as a separate entity in the factors of production. Why? Because when and once you understand that, then you can understand that all the classical liberals, when it came down to determining how to pay for government, what would they tax? Would they tax labor? No. Would they tax capital, which is to say tools, which is to say human labor applied to natural resources in order to bring about tools, those things which bring about efficiency, which is the thing that allows us to move up of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or allows us to have more personal freedom to do things, not what the collective asks of us, but what we have asked of ourselves, or however that's determined. Then it's almost universal. I would say that the classical liberals understood that the thing that you tax is man's use of natural resources. So you no more income tax, out. No more capital gains tax, out. No more business tax, out. No more, if you build a building, your building isn't taxed, that's out. Those are all products of they're fruits of your labor, and why should we be stealing other people's fruits? However, and this is where the collective comes into play, if the collective is responsible for the defense of the territory, if they can make claim to the territory and hold on to the territory and hold the territory, then within the context of that territory, they can declare that land is common. Not anything, natural resources isn't something that individuals or the collective produce, it's what's there. And if you can hold and defend that territory, then what you can say is any member of the collective that wants to have title of monopoly right over a piece of natural resource, then what that member owes to the community, and I'm switching from collective to community here, whatever proprietor that is, whether it's a homeowner or whether it's someone who owns a shop in town, that proprietor owes back to the community a return for their monopoly use of that piece of the territory. And that, by the way, is an idea that was introduced by Thomas Paine in an essay he wrote in 1796 while living in France. And that's, yes, the same Thomas Paine who wrote the essay Common Sense that was published back in February of 1776, which predated the Declaration of Independence by 4 months.
Well, Rami and everybody else, I am going to have to detach from this wonderful Zoom session here. We went from freedom to economics, but it's okay. Everything goes. I enjoyed every bit of it. I always enjoy these sessions. Chris, it was great meeting you. And unfortunately, I have stuff that I need to do. So I would rather stay here for another 5 hours, but I don't think it's going to work.
You're not free.
I'm not free in that regard.
Free.
So anyway, so again, a wonderful session. David, Romy, Chris, and Jairo, I am bowing out. And I hope that we can continue this next Saturday.
Thank you, Luis.
Same time.
Next
Okay.
time, enjoy your day.
May your common sense party prevail.
It's going to take a lot of votes. All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We have a visitor from Japan.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
This is Yoshi or Yosh. Which
Yoshi.
Hey, Yoshi.
Thank you. What time is it right now where you live?
It's 9:45 in the evening.
Wow.
So you're 13 hours ahead of us. What have you gathered so far from this conversation, Yoshi?
Well, yeah, I've been listening to your heated discussion, but it's hard to express my impression. But what? Oh, it's yes, it's kind of difficult to impress my expression. Sorry about that. Because
Well, you come from a whole nother place with a whole nother history.
yeah, right. Well,
Hey, Rami. Sorry. Were you finished with what you were saying, or did you still have more?
I could go on with that stuff for another 5 hours, but I don't want to dominate and I don't want to monopolize.
Okay. I don't know, but it just seems like Okay, I kind of understood where you were coming from until you brought up taxes, and because it kind of goes into, I guess, because what Louis was saying in regards to, honestly, I thought this discussion was about reality, because that's what the meetup said. And then we switched to freedom, which kind of confused me. And then, I don't know. But nonetheless, I'm kind of flexible in whatever topic we discuss. But my thing is, and I don't understand, I guess, your conclusion on, in regards to how freedom and also, I guess, the concept of how do we determine if a person should be, how to determine if someone is actually doing their job in regards to taxes. Because, I mean, that's in itself kind of a different subject altogether, because, I mean,
How do the two connect? Because they seem like very
yes, yeah, they don't seem to connect, because, I mean, I get property tax and individual taxing the individual, as well as without taxing the property itself, or in addition to, if I'm not sure if that's what you're saying, is to combine both, because, I mean, we have sales tax here on, you know, every item, you know, and the same thing with shipping taxes, and then we have employee taxes. Everything's, there's tax for everything. Soon there's gonna be tax for your pinky. But I mean, I don't know.
Cuts.
That's tax too? When? I'm kidding.
Let me build in some connectors here.
Okay, please.
So much to cover. First of all, property tax, or let me give you an even more general term. I wish David Norton was still here, because he loves words. He loves etymology, the study of the history of words, how they develop, how phrases develop. You have something like the estate tax, and you have to understand what the estate is. And the estate is the collection of property, and it actually comes from the time of royals. Okay. Now, royals, throughout Europe at least, had this history of making claims upon the commons. We've all heard of the Magna Carta, that document from 1215, and a lot of people like to think that Western law is founded on the basis of the Magna Carta. Indeed, what it did was take rights from the king and create protections to the landed class, the barons, so that these were immutable rights. These were recognized that the barons, which today we would call the barons landlords, the barons could not be deprived of their property. And what was their property? Primarily their claim upon the commons. In addition to that, there was a sister document known as the, because the Magna Carta did not exist on its own. It was the right of the people in the forest. And the right of the people in the forest established the claim and the rights of the commons. The right of anyone to be able to go into the woods and to harvest fuel for their ovens, or to hunt game, or get this, back then, fields were considered common property. There were land tenders, and then there were land holders. But the idea of having land as private property is the fundamental issue. Because if, and here's the key, if the natural resources themselves are privatized to a set of persons within the nation, and I'm using the nation as an example because we still live in the age of nation states. If the only ones who have title to the majority of the natural resources within the given nation then those people become essentially the lords of the land, able to extract the wealth, the fruits of the labor of anyone living there upon the land, who have no other choice because there's no land left. So that,
Oh.
that's there.
I get where you're coming from now. Okay, I got it. Okay, because I was trying to get the connection because and then I guess in essence, like you were saying with the seed, that just kind of opens up more of a monopoly on it becoming to the extreme of those landlords becoming more of a not dictator, but like having more rights to it, and then soon enough they'll hold on to it, and eventually the poor won't have any access to it because they won't be able to afford it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I was trying to understand, you know, where you were, what the whole concept was, but now I'm able to conceptualize it. Okay, I got it now. Because at first, and then I guess in essence too, if they're able to, I guess, put a value on natural resources, who's to say what else they're able to, then there's a chance that they might actually get to the point of making air, you know, something that's, you know, a necessity for humans. They might end up monetizing that as well, which is also a possibility. Because, I mean, if you think about it, water, which is a natural resource that people need to survive, but yet a lot of cities, the water itself is contaminated with so many harsh chemicals, and in order to get any kind of clean water, you have to pay for it. I get where you're coming from, Rami. I get it. I just didn't understand how it connected to freedom. But in overall, when you said in the beginning, the goal is true freedom. And maybe I'm paraphrasing, but it's something of that. It's something of those words. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I got it now.
If you want to, unfortunately, I mean, we don't have time machines. Last Saturday, Luis introduced, I think, to Jairo, Boltzmann's reality, which is Boltzmann was a 19th century scientist, pretty amazing guy. And then for this week, during last week, Jairo came up with the idea of thinking in terms of mental freedoms. So
I do have a question though, Rami. So let's say, you know, property is just general for everyone.
well,
How?
specific property?
Sorry.
Specific property.
Okay. So there's a guideline to what's considered for certain individuals then.
Well, no, it's not based on individual either. This is what's so beautiful about it. So there are two classes. One is common, and the other is private. And I'm not saying classes of people, I'm saying classes of property. Mm-hmm. So Henry George in Progress and Poverty said this very radical thing. He put that out in 1879, and we're still coming to terms with first of all accepting it, and then second of all trying to figure out how to implement it. He said this thing. He said, "We must make land common." Now today we would refer to land as natural resources, and we can expand the economic idea of land to include things like electromagnetic spectrum, for instance. The license to transmit across certain wavelengths to provide, let's say 5G throughout neighborhoods. Neighborhoods ought to be able to charge a rent for those companies installing 5G transponders in their neighborhoods. And let that be an income for the people of the neighborhood. That places the decision of whether or not to have 5G transponders within the neighborhood squarely into the hands of the people of that neighborhood. Because then they're faced with the choice. Do we want to collect the rent and share that? Do we even want it at all? And today we don't even have the freedom to determine whether or not we get to be loaded with this radio frequency, electromagnetic frequency, coursing throughout our bodies 24/7, doing God knows what.
And also wind energy, installing wind turbines. Would that area where the wind blows, the people that live in that area should benefit from their wind going through their zone somehow?
Sure, because it's a natural resource, and at whatever level the rents are charged, because the community can draw. I'm trying to remember the person who said this, but essentially the idea is just it may have been Thomas Paine, the author of the essay Common Sense.
I think also landfills. I think certain cities, if you they get a credit for allowing dumps to be in their area, unless I'm mistaken, unless of course that's changed over the years.
Well, it seems like there's no lack of people who figure out ways of gaining advantage or taking opportunity at the unconsidered external cost of others.
Okay.
Just to complete the thought, just as labor is the means by which individuals gain their wage, then by land being the economic term for representing natural resources, then by natural resources, that is the means by which the community or collective or county, state, federal government, whatever level you want to take it out to, that would be the means by which that structure would have its natural source of wages.
What if one is a nomad?
Okay.
Doesn't live in one place for a very long time.
Sure.
How would he benefit from the benefit of being on a land?
Right. Well, the nomad does this wonderful thing. I'm going to take the example from history of two cases of nomad, European and the Middle Eastern. The European nomad, let's say the traveling band of minstrels, go from land to land, sing their songs and share their stories, those that they've collected from other lands. They provide a community, a service, a rolling service to communities. So they set out their hat or their guitar cases and they sing their songs, and people as they walk by toss money into them. And they can, I've met people who do this, by the way. Like one person and then their manager who manages all the equipment and the logistics. And this one little pair spent like 2 or 3 years and they were able to pay their auto insurance, live out of a trailer attached to their truck. It was amazing. We hosted them in our home one evening. Just really neat people living super free lives and like sharing wonderful like sets of goodness to wherever they went. And then let's say the classical image, at least in my mind, of the nomad is the camel caravan. These are people who take the good and leave the rest, but they also operate under the ethos of giving the best of themselves away. These are folks who facilitate trade, who create networks, knowledge networks actually. We could have today digital nomads, people who do something like a hybrid of both, where what they're doing is creating these, because what are markets? Markets are conversations, okay? It's people connecting with one another, getting to know one another, building levels of trust.
And faith too, but all that takes faith. Same what Lewis was saying with the collective or the community, but the nomads in essence are just kind of like smaller portions. And trust me, I understand the bigger the collective, the harder it is to for the research to even there's a greater chance of things going wrong, you know. And it's I don't know. There's really, the world is huge, but if the animals in the world can find a means to work within each other and, you know what roles and come as a group, why is it so hard for humans? And I mean, like, granted, I don't want to say we're more intelligent, because I mean, some of the simplest things we can't even combat, you know?
Well, I think it comes down to approach. There's a triumvirate nature of man. There's when I say man, I'm not speaking out of sexist term, just out of the represent human beings. There's the animal. That's physical, and also I would argue, like E.O. Wilson would claim, to a certain degree the social, maybe just a function, not just a function, but it is sort of an emergent property of the biological. And that's a topic for a whole nother Saturday.
Did you say the first one was?
Not which apply. The first one is the animal portion.
Oh, animal.
Then there's
the second one, social.
Okay. Well, yeah, and the social may be to a great degree an extension of the animal. Okay, because we see animals, we see ants, we see in just about every species some social structures. These are observable phenomena. Then we have the rational, and we're talking about things like reason. The thing about reason is everyone thinks that they're being reasonable. The trap associated with reason is that it can be bent any which way. And not only that, but we're not necessarily the ones doing the bending. So by way of programming, by way of the repetition of lies, as David Norton would say, you could bend individual consciousnesses to supporting the worst sort of dictatorships. And then there's the intellectual. And I think that why certain human beings have dominance or control over natural resources, even to the point where they start considering other human beings as simply more natural resources. In other words, absent of intellect and reason. I'm not saying that's the claim. I'm saying that may be the view of certain individuals. They may only look at other beings merely as animals. I mean, that's the basis of slavery.
It's greed. I think overall it's just pure greed, because if you need to have control or possession of anything that's not, yours, like for me, even though children are a form of two parents' DNA, once that child is out the womb, my personal view on it is it's no longer yours. I'm sorry. I don't care how much you want to argue or say, you know, you gave birth or that's your DNA and you're the mother's DNA or the father, you know, it's no. That's its own. The child is, as soon as it comes out the womb, that's he, she, it is its own property. I mean, not property, entity. Why am I saying property? Entity. You know, and as such, you know, I don't know. But people don't see it that way. People, you know, they want to control things that has nothing to, want to have a voice or opinion or control over things that doesn't even relate to them. You know, prime example would be men who want to take control of a woman's reproductive means of abortion. You know, it's like, you're not a woman. I'm sorry. No matter how much you want to be, just like when I was younger, I wanted to be a man. Till now, I still want to be a man because it just seemed like men have it easier, you know. But that was my viewpoint, you know, because it's like being a woman, God, you go through so much pain. Every month you go through pain, you know, from the age of 18, having to go through your menstrual and all this other BS, and then not having your voice, it just seems like you're controlled as a woman. So I always wanted to be a man. But anyhow, so as a woman, it's like you're carrying a child, but every man in the Supreme Court, every man in court, every man in everywhere wants to tell women, hey, you have to carry this child. You cannot not carry this child. As if they're the one carrying the child. Like, I don't understand that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yes, this is your DNA, you know, intertwined with the woman's DNA. But ultimately, realistically, and this is where I kind of have an issue with myself, because I understand the perspectives of the man, I understand the perspective of the woman, and I also understand the perspective of those who are not in the position to make a comment, which would be, you know, the outsiders, like the pro-choice people, pro-life, not pro-choice, pro-life people, because they're in essence arguing the child is its own entity and should be able to decide. But what they fail to realize is the child in reality is not really born. I mean, there's, you know, I don't know. It's just, it's complicated because it's just, everyone wants a say and control in an individualist person's personal, emotional, financial self, you know, and I don't know, it just seems like there's no solution, you know, and of course, like Louis was saying, you know, and I get it, you have to do it for the betterment of a community. And if not, then you become shunned, you become a vagabond, you become an outcast.
So, Rami, could in Georgism or your social contract that George proposes, or that, whatever you want to call it, could land also include the woman's womb?
No. That's stretching it, Jairo. No, my thing in regards to freedom is people want to control. And even if you are a collective or you're doing it for the community, in essence, I don't know. It's hard to say because there's really no true way to make it where everybody wins. Idealistically, in my view, it'd be nice, people be free how they want to be free, say what they want to say without no repercussions, or live in a land where they can go and travel and be, within each other, within certain groups, without fear or judgment. But
Chris, Jairo, may I offer a response?
yes, please.
Chris, you utilize a very high level concept, and it's a very well predefined concept. It was by way of the word greed. And I say high level because it introduces, or it's an opportunity to dive in on what that represents. So I suspect that certain human beings have learned to operate the higher brain functions straight out of as a tool to enable the more base desires of the lower brain functions. So every one of our human brains has something of the ancient at its center. There's like the reptilian brain. Please don't accuse me of being a David Icke. The reptilian brain is one that knows how to survive. Reptilian brain knows its place. The reptilian brain gets what it wants. And the reptilian brain is also, it may be that, somewhere down the evolutionary chain, that there were warm-blooded. I think they discovered that a lot of dinosaurs were warm-blooded reptiles. But, and of course, birds are sort of like today's the descendants of today's, of the prior dinosaur line of evolution. So this is what I witness in my own neighborhood. Right down the sidewalk is, we have ducks, just generations and generations of ducks. I've lived here for a little over 7 years now, and I've witnessed generations of ducks be born, multiple generations each year. And they'll have these maybe up to a dozen or a baker's dozen worth of offspring. A mother duck, and there might be a helper mother duck, or there may be, well, usually that's how the operating classes, and all the ducklings will follow the mother, and some of them are straggle. Sometimes you'll have this other species of bird who will come down and land. These are the big, tall walking crane items that are like 4 feet tall. They'll walk up, they'll grab a duckling, slam it against the sidewalk, break the duckling's neck, pick up the now ex-duckling, gobble it, swallow it down their neck, and then with its eye, stare at the mother duck.
Wow.
This is why ducks have a dozen or so ducklings at a time. These are all strategies for propagation of the species, just like gender is a strategy for the propagation of the species for those who have gender. We're not, you may like to live asexual lifestyles or polyamorous lifestyles, or you name it. I'm not here to get in the way of anyone's freedom. But biologically speaking, we have this strategy for reproduction, and that's based upon binary gender, at least on the genetic level. And I'm not, by saying that, I'm not disregarding anyone's identity, nor am I disallowing anyone's choice or how to be,
So,
or how to see themselves in the world. I'm
greed
to a
is
genetic
good.
side. Well, okay, that's Greco's line from the movie.
Yes.
Well, okay, how is it good? And you're on mute right now.
It's good because if that crane didn't have the greed to want to gobble up the duckling, then there would be an overpopulation of ducks in the lake. That would be unsupportable. Then
There would be
the city would fill that lake up
with duck poo.
no longer have a lake.
And then you might not even have the human beings to be able to live around that pond that they congregate around, because that could lead to too much bacteria in the water, which could lead to a whole nother disease. I mean, you know that viruses can jump species. So yeah, homeostasis is a natural process, and when we go in with our reason and our intellect, thinking that we know better, or applying our greed on behalf of our species,
Or counter greed.
Well, I think that, you know, that is a term that's only that only goes so far in terms of usefulness. I like to look at the lower level, or I like to seek after the lower level understanding of what that term represents. In the end, I think you can call it greed, but I think the use of the word that's greedy, or the use of that phrase, is perhaps something that comes out of class warfare, struggle, Marxism only being an example of Hegelianism. If you want to trace the roots of Western racism, you could get the majority of understanding simply by studying Hegel. Hegel was the one who influenced Marx to think in terms of problem, proposed solution, in order to get an entire society into the actual desired solution, which I think is more or less the means, and this is why I stated that Marxists are a billionaire's best friend, because a billionaire, think of a billionaire as like someone who knows chess. They have an end game in mind. They know that the other person may have an end game in mind, may not. They're just playing a game. But an expert chess player against a non-expert chess player will already come with a set of strategies that they've developed by way of their experience or by way of their study, some combination thereof. And they'll be able to master the board. How? Well, by applying their techniques. And what Hegel provides is this technique for moving entire societies in the direction that you want them to move in. So, for instance, let's say you got rich. This is just a hypothetical. I'm not saying this is a piece of history. Let's say you got rich producing arms for the victors of the American Civil War. Well, that war is over. How are you going to continue your lifestyle? you got to keep, I mean, you've got all these tools. It's a big investment. You sacrificed to be able to save enough money to build the factory, to create these. If you're not maximizing on your prior investment, then you're not getting as much out of the world as you might be able to. So let's encourage some westward expansion, because hey, manifest destiny, and let's seed that idea into the society. There were groups during World War II. They were kind of silently prosecuted, but there were a set of Wall Street investors who basically helped interwar Germany. They made investments that enabled interwar Germany to build up secret armies, because the Germans, after World War I, they had created a set that went and trained in Russia and in the young Soviet Union, where they developed these skills, then able to later make the mistake of go and fight and try to take over the lands to Germany's east. President Hoover, prior to becoming president, wasn't even member to a political party. He had to choose a political party in order to become president, but he was an engineer, and he also had a political mind, because he was able to rally governments in multiple states throughout the Colorado River Basin to set up that dam that bears his name. It has two names. It's called Boulder Dam, and it's called Hoover Dam, after the man. But in between that, he did this very interesting thing. I know we're going far with this. When the Soviet Union, in their quote unquote wisdom, decided to kill all the effective farmers, the natural result of that was famine throughout the Ukraine. So many people were dying of starvation because they were operating off of Marxist philosophy. Marxism, I think, gets the majority of the diagnosis of the problem. They can define the problem, and they can define the problem in terms necessary to apply a solution which history has proven is deadly. Hoover actually arranged, using his engineer and his political skills, arranged for the American farmers who had already licked the problem of how to produce mass amounts of grain. We literally fed out of our own grain basket the Soviets who were starving. This guy, and won him a lot of respect here in the United States and internationally, because there were people dying even on the farms, because the people left over after the purges, they didn't necessarily know how to farm productively. So, and there's a Hoover Institution, Stanford University in California today, that also bears the name. What makes a Marxist a billionaire's best friend is that there have literally been what were back then the equivalent of what are today billionaires, who were funding movements and armies. To a certain degree, history is the story of, oh yeah, you and what army? And we see that today with groups like Blackwater, and you had that back in the time of the American Revolution in the form of the Hussons, I think. They were like Germanic mercenaries. In the end, they're kind of like, if you can train a people to not think, in other words, if you can substitute thought with programming, then you can move a society in such a way so that your reptilian brain, which is operating on the basis of survival, and remember, when it comes to things like money, there's never enough. Like, the idea of enough is a higher brain function. But if the lower brain only thinks in terms of survival, then it is your biological imperative as a person who has basically appropriate the upper brain to serve the purposes of the lower brain. then that's how you have naturally established dominance hierarchies.
So does that mean that the objective of a society that's going to use Marxism to move it the way it wants to, or the leaders of that society are gonna apply Marxism, then they have to remove the intellect of the working class? And would that mean that the working class is running on a reptilian mind? And would that mean that they are greedier than a person that has its intellect, that it's able to determine that enough is enough? I've eaten enough, and don't need to eat anymore. Although you see obesity in a billionaire class, well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, past a certain income, you can afford personal trainers to and chefs to make sure your glycemic index is always just right, and your physical activity level is always just right. You can live a very ideal life given a certain amount of income. Choice. I'd like for us to explore Chris's idea. I propose that you're drawing the line at birth. I'm thinking that the people who are operating on the low level brain level have already been for quite some time, if not 50 years, then 100, if not 100,000, if not 1,000, multiple thousands of years, have been operating, utilizing, in terms of, once you have all these resources, and that's no longer interesting to consider, and if you're willing to consider other human beings as natural resources, then I think that once you've achieved or arrived at or inherited that level of thought, then you can start thinking in terms of well, you can start thinking like a pharaoh. And when there are too many Hebrews and they threaten your order, your established order, then what do? You cull the herd. You take the infants and you throw them to the crocodiles. And I don't think that Pharaoh ever really went away. Sometimes Pharaoh is called emperor. Sometimes Pharaoh is called CEO. Sometimes Pharaoh is...
Oh my God, what did I say? Keep it down.
I don't know if you can hear my daughter in the background. Sometimes Pharaoh is... how do we put this?
President, queen.
Well, yeah, emperor, empress. I think it's on a level beyond just a mere kingdom, because here in the United States, anyone...
Head of household.
Well, more so than that, because I think head of household or king, queen, matriarchy, patriarchy, whatever you call it, it's because I've witnessed households that are both... I've seen patriarchies, I've seen matriarchies. I've seen them both. And I try to live with my wife as a strict egalitarian. We both compete sometimes. and we compete with purpose, and that purpose is to try to determine the best solution. And it's a collective partnership. So to the degree possible, I try to hold to an egalitarian principle, because two heads are better than one. When operating according to the well, let's just say a healthy set of precepts. But you know, America is kind of like a republic of kingdoms or queendoms. People who've claimed their fortune, who have established their domains, their territories, and if you have enough money built up by way of that means, then you get to have a say in how things work. The Princeton study from 2014 showed that if you've got the money so that you can fund the politicians' political campaigns, then you've got something like a 30% chance of being able to get your agenda pushed through and turned into law. Whereas everyone else really doesn't. It's statistically been found to be insignificant. Doesn't play a role in the decision. And laws, by the way, are only as good as they are enforced. So if you know, we've got maybe 12 to 24 times the amount of laws than we need, because people say there ought to be a law to stop that, and then you know it gets passed, and then subsequent executors, the executive branches of government, those responsible for enforcing the laws, or let's call them the rules, will just say, well, we're not enforcing that. So if it's not enforced, then for all practical intents and purposes, this is why we have antitrust laws on the books and no antitrust enforcement. It's why you can have companies like Amazon and Facebook, why AT&T, with all that deregulation that broke it into all these baby bells, could then be reformed yet again when the owners of Southwest Bell can go and gobble back up the baby bells and reform a single AT&T again. Which, by the way, in exchange for that wonderful luxury, if you recall, there was that guy who worked in the building in San Francisco who discovered there was a copy of the data center, one floor above the data center for AT&T, that was responsible for all the calls in the US that are also connecting internationally. So they were able to tee all that traffic of all those calls, which, by the way, is a violation of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. They were able to effectively monitor each and every one of those communications. And he whistleblowed that, and it was on 60 Minutes and well out there. And even this conversation that we're having right now, Jairo is making a local copy and then also a cloud copy. But every single thing on the internet, one of the interesting things about this pandemic and all of us moving online is it gives government, by way of private contractors, the opportunity to gauge the population. Because if we're all holding conversations online now, that means everything that we do and say is hypothetically, or at least potentially, being stored in some sort of mega data center, perhaps in Utah, perhaps someplace else. It could be a federated network.
It's right here in my basement. No, but
Data warehousing.
Wow, well, I mean, and then you have sets of AI tools that go through and try to monitor. They could be looking for keywords. They could be, if I had a set of keywords, I could read them off of a page right now, and that might flag this conversation for a human to go in and look at it.
I don't know, but what Louis was saying, oh God, now I already forgot. Okay, yeah, I remember now. He said something along the lines of, you know, as long as we understand as human beings that we're free in a form of not really being free. So like, we're human, but we're only limited to a certain amount of freedom, because at the end of the day, we are truly just for a collective, not for individual, you know, which is kind of interesting because there's really no individualism to begin with. It's an illusion to think that you have individuality. Once you're born, you're basically here for the collective. That's just how it is, because once you come out your mother's womb, you know, you're applied a social security number, and you're giving all sorts of, I don't know, like, how can I phrase it?
You're a set of a series of database entries, and you're right.
So it's like, what can you? It's like you just have to find a level of freedom that's normal for you, because ultimately, true freedom is an illusion. It's not part of reality. You know,
but it's a great illusion for the American people to believe that they're free. Land of the free, home of the brave. Our freedoms. We're gonna die or fight for our freedoms and honor our soldiers have fought and died bravely for our freedom.
Because I mean, back then, if anybody wanted to listen to our conversations or whatever, they'd have to go into our house, put in some kind of device to listen in. And you're correct, Rami. Now it's an easier access form for anybody, anywhere. And it's not just the government. It's anybody who has the intellectual capacity or the willingness or the savviness to basically find the means to get into our, I guess, listen in. Nothing is private. Literally nothing. Not even your medical records are private, you know, because anything that's stored in the cloud can be retrieved. It doesn't matter. I mean,
right.
All in all, it's kind of like for anyone to even think that they can have any form of privacy or any form of freedom.
Who's the biggest eavesdropper?
I don't want to say they're delusional, but you're fighting a battle that's pointless. I'm sorry. It's just.
Do you know who's the greatest or biggest eavesdropper? The one who knows everything about everyone in the world?
It's Facebook?
God.
God
knows what everyone is thinking all at the same time.
So does Santa Claus, but I don't know.
So I think we should rebel against God.
And Santa? No, I like my gift.
We demand that God give us back our privacy.
So that was that. So Saul Alinsky, he wrote the book that Hillary Clinton based her PhD thesis on. And I think it was called something like "There's Only the Struggle," which again is another Hegelian idea.
Freedom.
And Saul Alinsky, when he wrote his book, he kind of tongue in cheek wrote an acknowledgement to Satan. The Satan as described in Milton's Paradise Lost. In Paradise Lost, I think perhaps is how he was viewing it, or he could have been using the biblical idea. By the way, Satan, there's a lot of connotation there. In the original Hebrew, it means adversary. And in the original Hebrew scriptures, the word is used 6 times, twice as a noun. So adversary. It could be adversary, man to mankind, or it could be adversary. Apologies, daughter. It could be adversary in terms of like the Satan, which is to say adversary to God. in Milton's Paradise Lost, I think, if I understand it correctly, is, because I have not read it, it's the idea of establishing a kingdom on earth because he could not take heaven. There's a lot more that could be said there, but I'm gonna leave it. There's this other idea, and I want to get back to it so we can get back to a whole even lower level item. So I think that there's plenty of evidence to show that the idea of eugenics, or the shaping of human destiny, which is the promise of eugenics. I'm not a fan of the pseudoscience, and I call it a pseudoscience on purpose. Although it doesn't really matter what label I attach to the idea. It's that idea that that could be considered from a few different perspectives. But let me start by pursuing it from what I at least imagine to be the female perspective. Like you said, Chris, I can never be a woman. But I think that whenever a woman has the privilege to decide who their man or who the father of their children is going to be, they're practicing that choice which determines the shape of human society. Or not necessarily, I mean, that may be epiphenomenon. They decide who their children are based upon the traits and the qualities, the features of who's determining or who's providing the other half of the genetic food.
Except for the case of rape.
Right, that's another situation. I don't know if I want to address that because I don't know if that's going to trigger anyone in the room.
Wait, it's just you, me, Yoshi. Is Yoshi still on?
Yoshi, say
Yes, I'm
something.
here.
Okay. You didn't say anything, so I just want to make sure you're still here. And then it's you, Rami. I mean, there's only 4 of us.
Actually, I had set up.
There's 2 Ramis and 2 Jairos.
Oh, there is? Where? Really?
I don't know. I'm using this a device, and by the way, I was holding up a device earlier on the idea of the monitoring. I was holding up. This smartphone came by way of SafeLink.
I have to leave at 10, just so you guys know. Okay.
I'm sorry. Leave at 10.
I have to leave at 10. So.
Okay, 15 minutes then. Thank you for that.
15 minutes to save the world, Rami.
This is a really cheap smartphone. It's about as cheap as they get. And the reason why I'm holding it up, it's a mirror. It's almost like a monolith. When I look at it, I see the same basic form factor as the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now the neat thing about this, and my mother was issued one as well. If you're on public support, they'll send you a letter and say, hey, need a phone? Here's a phone, which is also a GPS tracking device, which is also a potential recording device, and we're offering it to you for free. If it's free, you're the product. So that's how you get a society to willingly take upon themselves monitoring equipment. All right, that's just an aside. Jairo attended, I remember the second. I don't think you were at the first, or maybe you were. We set up 2 earlier events. The first one was entitled, you can go into past events for Central Florida Philosophy, Chris. The first one was titled, Is It Just Us? Is it just us? Just us being a play on the word justice. Is it justice? And in that, I set up the event to explore the question of justice in terms of the debate on abortion. And I was always sort of disappointed that we weren't able to attract women to come be a part of that. It was just men talking about the topic. And that seems pointless to me because, I mean, what does it matter? we know where the ultimate decision lies, at least according to today's legal framework. Margaret Atwood did a very fine job in writing in 1985 The Handmaid's Tale, a world where the decision was completely removed from the only women able to still reproduce. That was speculative fiction on a grand, horrific scale.
Actually, I think it stems from some form of nonfiction as well, because back in the days, women didn't have the choice. Period. That was, I mean, nowadays, I mean, even to a certain degree, certain cultures, their women's only goal is to reproduce. That's it. You know,
their economic security. That's what's going to take care of you in your older age.
That's not true, because because and it's kind of and that's where for me that's why I always feel like a child is their own entity. I feel like parents burden their kids with this ideology of I have you so that later on, when I become old, decrepit, or senile, or unable to care for myself, that you, as the young person, able-bodied, will, be able to take care of me. No, I don't believe in doing that, because again, you're controlling your child, and for me, it's like, I don't know, my family, we're totally different in that regard. We respect our elders, we respect their opinions. We respect their opinions. You get what I'm saying? But like my father, and I kid you not, he is the most individualist, independent person ever. He tells all of us the same things. He does the same things for all of us, which is complicated in itself, and I don't know how, but anyhow, his thing is, and he's taught all of us to be self-sufficient. And being self-sufficient isn't just for us. It also goes in line with him too. So as an elderly, which he would not consider himself that, because he thinks everyone's an old fart but himself, he tells us that our job is to take care of ourselves, and for us not to take care of him.
Yes.
That
works until it doesn't.
Yes, but eventually you have to think of the people who don't have kids. Who takes care of them?
Right.
So so it's kind of like you're I don't know, if you have kids, if your main reason to have kids is because you want them to be able to take care of you, that's a selfish way of looking at it, because I always wonder, like, how, like, what's the word? Like, people, like, what if your kids don't like you? What if your kids felt like you were a horrible parent? Because at the end of the day, there's no guarantee.
Right.
It's like, I don't know.
Well, I think there's a response to this actually found in the letter of James. James was Jesus' half brother, a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. James summed it up beautifully. He said that, let me see if I can recall, pure, undefiled religion that the Father, meaning Lord Jesus is Christ's dad, for whom we are all given the opportunity to become children of, is to look after the needs of orphans and widows in their distress, and to not become defiled or polluted by the world. Yeah, anything else is probably just masturbation in terms of religion. If it's not actionable, if it's not providing a real good, then it's most likely simply self-serving. So I don't know about men. Like in the case of your father, I've known a former pastor who went on after 30 years of serving various churches on 2 continents. And then retiring, moving away from that work and becoming a middle school science teacher. So he understood both the theological and the scientific, because he taught both, right? That's the best way to know a subject, is by teaching it. He had 4 daughters. He had a divorce. In his youth, he worked in his hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. He was like 19. He worked on Robert F. Kennedy's campaign to run for the presidency before RFK was shot. When he died at the age of 65 of cancer, after about a 5.5 or 6.5 year life with cancer, his 4 daughters just didn't really want to have a service. Didn't want to do anything. You know, his fatal flaw was he didn't know. He grew up in a time and in a place that did not. It was pre-feminism. Feminism is the radical idea that women are people too.
I'm not saying that, you know, what I'm saying is basically don't have, that people who have kids for the sole purpose of being taken care of in their elderly days it's I don't know, it's a selfish reason to have kids.
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
I hear
because
that.
ultimately, you as an individual, yes, you'll get old, but if you take care of your health, you know, mentally, physically, you know, you won't need help, you know, per se. Obviously, people who's going to need help to some degree, but you won't be to the point where you need constant help, you know, because I think a lot of people think that they can, like, you know, just disregard their health and be like, you know, I have kids, I'll let my kids take care of me. No, that's
Right.
not their job. Their job is to be their own person.
Thank you for that.
You know? And it's just, I don't know, people have, you know, it's like they live through their kids and are
what
like.
about retirement?
Retirement, again, retirement is the.
Society be able to pay for maintaining people to live up to 130 years or more, or something. Could be monasteries. After age 60, everybody has to be, no, maybe that's too young. Age 80, you have to consider becoming a monk or a nun in a Buddhist monastery, and the Buddhists will take care of you.
Well, what if you find Buddhism a tyrannical belief system that you want to have nothing to do with?
Or a Franciscan monk.
But what if you want to live absolutely free of religion?
All I'm saying is
Must include
we should not hold our kids down to make them like a servant of having to take care of us. They should want to do it willingly. For me, if like I live with my dad, but you know, it's kind of like, how can I put this? he's still his own person. I make sure that he's okay without actually taking care of him. There's a means to it, you know. There's a way to go about it without, you know, being I don't know.
It's
I don't
fun.
know.
He inspires you. He's inspired you.
What if your father goes ill or has Alzheimer's or dementia after a while? Are you willing to take care of him, or are you going to send him to a nursing home?
My belief in sending parents to a nursing home is up to the individual. I personally would not, because again, my upbringing is, I don't want to say I feel obligated, you know, but it's kind of like my parents raised me, you know, so therefore, like, my duty as their kid, you know, per se, is to, I guess, pay it forward back to them or reverse it, I guess. I don't know. But again, for me, I'm different. It's not just my parents that I would take good care of, you know. It's people who I personally would, you know, who are dear to me too, you know. But again, ultimately, it's kind of like, that's what nursing homes are for. But again, a lot of them don't take good care of the elderly. And that's where the problem rises, which is why I personally would not send them to, you know, an old person's home, you know. But some parents, some elderly people, how can I put this? They don't want to be taken care of because they can take care of themselves. You know, not to say not to, you know, watch them and make sure that they're okay, but you can still do that by observing them and making sure their well-being is being taken care of. I don't know.
So is having kids a form of social security? Like, Rami, do you expect or hope that your kids will take care of you when you're 120 years old and can barely get out of the bed?
I haven't thought about it, Jairo. My wife thinks it's going to come down to someone from the society. And
what?
We don't know if we're going to go together or which one of us is going to go first. But I face every day the reality of being a caregiver to my mother. And since we're just about at 10 a.m., I'd like to leave us with this thought. Elon Musk has pointed this out. He says that we aren't facing a population explosion. We're facing a population crash. In fact, our population has been crashing for some time.
As in not increasing?
As in not having enough caregivers. Think about the reason why Social Security, that system, is under strain is because we've gone from 22 workers to one benefit drawer, to 13, to 4, to 3. Okay? There aren't going to be enough caregivers for all the boomers. And what kind of quality of life are they going to have in their final days?
And that's
We're
where
gonna
I
have
say,
to move the military to take care of them.
no, we have to take care of our health now. Now, that is, again, it's God. My grandmother is like 100-something, and she takes care of herself. Like, my father basically is like she's in a nursing home. So my father just every once in a while go and checks up on her. The only thing she needs to do is, like, once in a while I would go grocery shopping with her. But she takes care of herself. Some of the small things or whatever. She's an independent home. She takes care of herself. I don't know. I mean, a lot of other cultures, I don't get it. But I don't know. It's just, if you are healthy, if you take care of yourself when you're supposed to, during your old ripe age, you won't, that's just my opinion, of course, you won't need people to take care of you because you would have taken care of yourself.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I think in I'm in Japan, and Japan is like there's a lot of elderly people, and there's a lot of over 60, 70 people, but they wanna, if they are like able, they have an able body, they want nobody to take care of them because they can take care of themselves. So I think here we have the same thought, I guess.
Yeah, we have a lot that we can learn from Japan for sure, here in the States, especially when it comes to living in community, and your country has a lot of wisdom to offer the rest of the world.
And hot men, I'm sorry. Anyways, I had to go, you guys. So that was me going on a tangent, but we should do this again. So yeah, because it's 10 o'clock, so I have to start my day. Actually, my day started at 5.
So we learned so much. May this inspire us to increase our understanding of our freedoms or lack of them, and so on, and improve our ability to increase our mental freedom and an awareness. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day, Rami, Jairo, and Yoshi. Next time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Yoshi. Come back
Bye.
next Saturday morning. Thank you, Rami.
Thank you, Jairo.
That was a trip.
Thank you for having me.
Look forward to meeting and getting
Thank
to know you
you.
more, Yoshi.
See you next Saturday morning.
Thank you very much. It was a good conversation. It was a little difficult, but
Have a happy day.
If it's not challenging, it's not worth it.
yeah, that's true. Yes.
Right,
How can I share it? Should I put it on YouTube or on Facebook?
Both.
Should I break it down into 3 or 4 parts?
Well, one whole raw version like you did last week. So I love it, the raw whole thing, so that you're getting the kit and caboodle. I'm going to go
edited
the first part later.
The raw version.
The entire file.
Edited.
Just
What's the other word?
Do minor parts after the fact, but just stick the whole raw version and then just do the up. You set an excellent template or a great example.
Oh, and I could put it on a podcast.
All the above.
Unabridged.
All right. Good night and good morning.
Good night. Good morning.
Yeah. Bye.
Take care. Wash your hands. Put your face mask.